Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're in the sewing room. I am getting ready to reveal our April dish mat of the month. So if you want to see what design I came up with, stick around. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. Now, all of you guys have been asking me, is the April dish mat coming out still? What design are we going to see on the April dish mat? When are you going to share with us the April dish mat? And yes, they are coming out, and today I'm going to share it with you. And as far as the design is concerned, I had so many designs that I was thinking of and had jotted down and kind of scribbled out and used graph paper and stuff and kind of put my ideas on paper. And to decide which one to do, I thought about my viewers. All of you are at different levels in your sewing journey. And I wanted to make sure that this is something that's friendly for any level. And also, I wanted to make sure that whatever size dish mat you purchased, it will work. Because we all know that dish mats, depending on where you purchase it at, will be all different sizes. So I chose this one, and I think you're gonna like it. I hope so. I know I really do. And this is a pattern that we can do so much with, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But the block I chose was a basket block, and that's for Easter baskets. So here is our dish mat for April. I really love it. And as you can see, we have strips over here, and that is braided. And then we have an 8-inch block in the center. So any block that you have that you can put on point that's 8 inches would work perfectly for this dish mat. So if you have some blocks that are orphan blocks, that means you haven't used them in any projects, you might consider putting it into a dish mat. Also, you can make a different size block. It's just going to change the size of this in the center and maybe give you a lot more strips. So I'm really happy with this. In fact, I was so happy with this that I needed to make a runner for a cabinet in my bathroom. And I decided to use something similar to this. And I made this runner. And I used a lot of Adita Sitar's fabric. And she has some beautiful blues. But this is a lot longer, or not a lot longer, but quite a bit longer than our dish mat. It's still an 8-inch block, and that is a different basket block in there. I wanted to try another one, but they're so easy to put together. They're made up very similar. They're just either half square triangles or just plain squares. And it's just a 16-piece block, 16 block. And so I thought this is just perfect for any kind of runner that you want to make. And if I wanted to make this for a dish mat instead of purchasing one, all I have to do is cut my background and my batting the size I want, and then I can make whatever design on it. You don't have to have a dish mat. You know, if you are, the nice thing about a dish mat is that everything's already layered in there and it's very absorbent. But if you're a seasoned sewer and you want to make a dish mat using a towel for a background, or just batting in the middle or foam in the middle, whatever you want, or if you wanted it to be a heat resistant and heat safe mat, you could use the, I can't even think of what it is. Whatever that is they put into pot holders and make it so that it's heat resistant too. But I thought it was really cute. And anyone that can stitch a straight line can make this. It's not hard. So I hope you give it a try. In this video today, I'm going to take you step by step on how to make this mat right here. I'll share what kind of fabric I'm using. I'll share with you how to put that block together. I'm also going to share with you a site where you can get some free half square triangle paper. So I hope that you will enjoy having that free resource. So here is how you make the April dish mat. All right, here is the block we're going to be making. And it is a basket block. And because this is April's dish mat of the month, I thought what better block to do than a basket, like an Easter basket. So we are going to be using this pattern right here, and you will find this right here in the description box below. The fabric that I decided to use is a fat quarter bundle that I received in my Sew Sampler box. I believe it was last year. And it is a collection by Heather Briggs of My So Quilty Life. And I thought this would look perfect in an April dish mat. It has such pretty light colors, and it just made me think of spring. I have 6 fabrics in this bundle, and I need to choose one to make the basket with. I'm looking at all of them, and let's just start with this back one. So this one is a cream background with some large flowers on it. And when I put it next to the background for my block, I think it's too washed out, and I don't think it's going to be seen very well. The other problem is the flower print is so big that whenever you cut pieces out, it's going to look different depending on which portion you get. And I don't think the basket will pop like it needs to. So this one right here, I'm not going to use for the basket. It will be used for a strip though. The next 3 actually, are these 2 plaids in this stripe. Now, if I were patient, I would be able to make these half square triangles and things and line them up and get them looking nice. But really, they're tricky to work with, especially on the bottom part of the basket, lining up all those pieces. We're going to set that aside. Then I'm left with these 2 pieces. Now, this is kind of a brownish color. It would show up okay, but it's just not really doing anything for me. You know, it is probably the color of a basket, but it's just kind of drab. And I don't really think I want to use that one. It might look fine, but it's just not what I'm thinking. Now this one has some little white flowers on it, and it's cute, and it would show up pretty well. But I'm thinking I would like to have it pop just a little bit more. So I found in my scraps a 10-inch square of a fabric that's just a tiny bit darker than the other fabrics in this line, but it still coordinates perfectly. But it just pops a little bit more. It actually matches the stripe in that stripe fabric. So I'm thinking out of these 3 right here that I am going to use this one. I've got plenty there with it being a 10-inch square. And so let's make the basket block using that piece. So here is the block, like I said. You're going to find this print right here in the description box. And I'm not going to put any other cutting directions or anything because this is so simple, and you can write this down as I'm making it or take screenshots. So we know that all of these blocks are 2-inch square finished. That means we are going to have to make them 2.5 inch before we sew them all together. So they'll be 2.5 inch unfinished. Remember, this is making an 8-inch basket block. And I'll put this up on the screen closer here in a minute. So that means I'm going to need, and I'm looking at it, and I see that there are some white squares, and there's some print squares, just one. And then I see some half square triangles, and these are the ones that have both the print and the background fabric. So let's count how many half square triangles we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 half square triangles, so we're going to be making 9 HST as half square triangles that are 2-inch finished. And I'm putting the finished size because a lot of times the half square triangles, the triangles on the roll, they go by the finished size. And we are going to be using the triangle paper. I have a free link for you to get some free triangle paper. So if you don't have any on hand, I'll share a site that has a free download. Okay, then we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these are background. And I'll just put BG, background fabric. And these are going to be 2.5 inch squares that we're going to cut. We're going to cut them exactly 2.5 inch square. Okay, BG for background. And then we're going to need 1 print 2.5 inch square. Okay, so if you want to take a screenshot of that, get it in there for you. Those are the blocks that we're going to need. There are 16 blocks altogether. It's a 4x4, and you can check and see 16. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to share with you is the paper that we are going to use. Now, this is a free downloadable half square triangle paper sheet that you can get. Just download it and print it. It's from Generations Quilt Patterns. I use these all the time. I do have some that I've purchased. Sometimes I'm making something and I don't have the right half square triangle size paper, and it's really nice to be able to find some free online. And so I will put a link in the description box below so that you can go to this site and get this as well. This is the one we're using today. When you're using this paper, you need to check that you printed it off correctly. And it will say in the middle, the distance between the solid vertical and horizontal lines is 2 7/8 inches. Stitch on the dash lines cut on the solids. So you want to check and make sure your printer printed it correctly. It should measure from this line here to this line here, 2 7/8. And mine does right there. If it doesn't, check the settings on your computer when you're printing it and make sure you're printing it at 100%. So this is the paper that I'm going to be using, and it's not going to be taking too much fabric. This is going to make 12, and we said that we needed 9. So we can go ahead and make, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. I'm just going to go ahead and make 12. It's not a big deal for me. I can just leave this square together and this one right here, and just put them off to the side. Like I said, in many of my videos, I like to collect half square triangles and make something out of them when I can. Now what I'm doing is just trimming this down. I'm not cutting on the line yet. You don't want to cut on that dark line. So as you can see, I've left all the lines, but I've just made it a little smaller and easier to handle. So after I have my half square triangle paper cut to size, I go and cut a piece of fabric that's my background fabric and my print fabric, put them right sides together, and then I put my template or my paper on top. Now I cut my fabric just a smidge bigger just because I like to be able to see it to make sure I'm getting all the sewn lines done. And then I'm just going to pin it in place. Remember, the dotted lines are the lines that we sew on, and the black lines are the cut lines. So I'm pinning where I'm not going to be sewing. And I only need about 3 pins probably. Okay, so as long as that's steady, you're good. So what I'm going to do when I sew this, I think I'm going to start, make sure you can see that. I think I'm going to start down here in the bottom corner. I'm going to go all the way up to the top, go here, go down all the way to the edge, go down, then come back up, go back up, all the way to the edge, all the way to the edge, all the way to the edge, back down, and then right to where I started again. If you do it like that, you won't have to cut your thread, and it'll just be one continuous stitch, and that works out great. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I am going to change my stitch length to a smaller stitch length. So I'll get this, and when I come back, we will start cutting it out. Okay, I have my stitches all done on the dotted lines. I can take my pins out. And you can check and make sure that you have all your stitches done by seeing the design. It's just kind of a square, a double square, and then 2 lines. Just make sure you see that same design on the back. If you see that you skipped a line somewhere in there, just go and do it before you start cutting. So we're going to start off, and I'm just going to use my rotary cutter. And if you have a special rotary cutter just for cutting paper and templates, you can use that. I just use this one, and when my blade gets dull, I just change it. And all I'm doing here is just doing the outside black lines, solid lines. And you want to cut it right on the line, not inside of it. You don't want to make your squares too small. Okay, that's scrap. Now we're just going to cut down the middle on this solid line. And then I can use scissors for this part because this part is 1 snip usually. And then I cut, this is a seam line here, so it doesn't matter on that one exactly being exact. It's just the seam allowance. This line is one I need to be careful with. And then this is just seam allowance. So I need 9 of these, and I'm going to have 3 left over. So I think I'm just going to cut like that. And then this is my leftovers that I'll put in my half square triangles. Okay, so what you have now is you have your paper, you have your background fabric, and you have your print. If you open up your print and your background fabric, there you have your half square triangle. So in order to tear this off, what I do is I fold it back on that seam line and just use my fingernails to kind of press it. That kind of allows it to tear nicely, and just tear gently. And then this other piece will just come right off. If I can get a hold of it with my fingers. There we go. Okay. And then if you have any that stick, just pull them off. Then what you're going to do is you're going to press it, and I'm going to press mine toward the dark, so that toward the print fabric. And after you have them pressed, you're just going to want to cut off those dog ears. Just cut it even with the fabric, and you're going to have it like this. So I'm going to go to my ironing board, get these ironed up, get the paper torn off, and then I'll come back. And when I come back, I will also have 6 background squares that are 2.5-inch squares. I will have 1 of my print fabric in a 2.5-inch square, and I'll have all 9 of my half square triangles, and we'll be putting this block together. So I'll be right back. Okay, let's lay this out. I've got all of these pieces, and then I've also got our squares that I've cut out of the fabric in the background. So let's just start laying it out. We're going to go across on a row. So we're going to go here. That's pointing down to the left or to the right, pointing down to the right, pointing down to the right, and then a plain white background square. Second row, pointing down to the right, a plain white background square, pointing down to the right, and a plain white background square. Okay, pointing down to the right, pointing down to the right, whoops, there, a print square, and pointing up to the left. Okay, white and white. 1, 2, pointing up and left, and then a white. So look at your block carefully to make sure you have it laid out correctly. It should look like your picture here, and it does. Now all we need to do is just sew all of these pieces together, and we're going to do it by rows. So I'm going to take these 2 pieces right here, put them right sides together. I will stitch a 1/4 inch away from this edge. I will put these 2 pieces right here, right sides together, stitch a 1/4 inch away from the edge, and then I will take these 2 pieces here and put right sides together and stitch them together. So we're going to stitch all of these 4 together. Then I'm going to do this row, and this row. And when I have all 4 rows stitched together, I'll bring you back. I have all of my strips sewn together, and when I press them, I press so the seam allowance alternated. On this one, it's all going this way, then it's going this way, then it's going this way, and then it's going this way. That way, when we put them together, the seams will nest, and that will make it easy to sew. So we're just going to put this one right sides together with this one, and make sure before you start doing this, you've got your rows in the right order. So make sure you've got it right. So we're going to put this one with this one, and it looks like I need to repress those seams. I'll get that in a second. And we're going to match up our seams and just let them nest very nicely. Get my pins here. And there we go. And I do pin this, even though they're nesting. I do want these squares to match up nicely and get their points. And it'll look nicer that way. Okay, I'm going to do that one. And then I'm also going to do the same thing here, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this one at the same time. Right sides together. Let it nest. Now, if you have any that are Looks like these are all going to be good. If you have any that are bulging in one direction, for instance, this one right here, well, it's not really, but I can pull it to get it to tighten up. But if you have one that's pretty loose on one side, put that on your feed dog. So you'll lay it like this with this side down, and those feed dogs will take that in. All right, so now I'm going to go back to my sewing machine and stitch 1/4 of an inch away from both of those edges. And then I will put these two pieces together by sewing these two pieces just like we did and match them up. So when I bring you back, I will have all of these sewn together, and I'm going to press this last seam open. There'll be 3 seams that will need to be pressed open. I'll be right back. And here is our finished 8-inch block. It should measure at this point 8.5 inches square, but once it gets sewn in, it will be 8 inches. So if your edges are kind of raggedy, you can square those up or just trim those up. I'm just going to even them out just a tiny bit. I am not going to square it to 8 inches because we really don't need it to be exact for this project, but I am going to straighten that edge. You still want to have 1/4 inch at all of your points because you need that seam allowance, but I just noticed we have some threads and a few little pieces poking out, and really that's all I'm going to trim. And you can shape this better by using some spray mist of water or starch and just kind of shaping it with your iron. But we're not concerned about that on this block because it's going to be in a dish mat. So I'm just evening them up so I can match them well with my seams. Okay, so there we have it. Now we're ready for the next part. Now that we have our quilt block made, now it's time to put it on our dish mat. Now there are lots of different dish mats out there, and I always just try to find the cheapest one since we're just putting fabric over it. And if you've seen my other videos, I've talked about Hobby Lobby has had their spring shop mats on sale for 40% off, and they're normally $3.29, and so they end up being about just under $2. And I mean, you cannot buy the foam batting for that price, and so that's a great price. I also bought this one at the Dollar General store here in town, and it was $3, and it was in the spring department. That's a good price too. Again, I don't think you can buy the foam for that price. And you can find them at thrift stores. This one didn't even look like it had been used. This was a nice one. Just has a little dust on it from all my fabric. And then this is the one that that I showed you in the package from Hobby Lobby. Now, they might be a little bit different in size, and Hobby Lobbies are longer and thinner. So this one is about 14 inches by 21, I believe. So it's a longer and thinner rectangle. These others, let's see what these are. Sorry if I'm making you sick with all this color. Let's see. This one is about 18 by 16, and that's what that gray one is too. And then this Dollar General one is 16 by 18. So 16 by 18 for those other 3. So any of those will work for this project, whatever size you have, because once you get the block made, the strips that we're going to be adding to it can be any size. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and use the Hobby Lobby one just because they are one that a lot of people have. I know a lot of people were finding them there. Now this one has a really vivid, bright top. And when I lay my block on it, you can see that fabric through it. I'm going to turn this one around because both sides have the same absorbency, and I'm just going to use the back, and that's fine. This is a little bit more terry cloth than this. This is a little smoother, but it's okay. I know somebody had said in my comments on one of my other ones that she just offered the suggestion of you can always turn it upside down and have a pretty side too. And that's a great idea. So if your fabric is showing through to the print side, you can always use the solid side as your top. And all you'll have to do is just tear off or cut off your label here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to find the middle here and the middle here. So let me grab a marking pencil. Okay, so we know that the height of this is, it is just 14. So I need to find 7. Make a mark there. And we can find 7 right over here somewhere too. It doesn't have to be all the way at the edge. And then we can just connect those 2 lines. And I'm using a friction pin, so this will disappear with heat. This is going to be underneath your fabric, so as long as it doesn't show through your fabric, or if it were like a marker that would bleed through the fabric when it gets wet, that wouldn't be a good choice. Something that you know won't mess up your top. But this, I can just hit it with a little hot heat. It doesn't even have to be very hot, and it will disappear. Okay, then on this one, this is actually 20 and a half. So half of 20 and a half is 10 and 1/4. So let's make 10 and 1/4 there. And make sure. And sometimes your mats may not be square. Of course, they're made in a factory, and so they may not be exact. So just measure what yours is. 10 and 1/4. Connect those 2 lines. Now I'm keeping my binding on. It doesn't bother me, and my sewing machine can go through it. But if your sewing machine is not very powerful and has a hard time going through thicker fabric, you can cut your binding off. Just take a rotary cutter and cut it off. These on the Hobby Lobby ones are quite thin. It shouldn't make a difference, but if you have one that has a thicker binding, you can trim that off. Now I also like doing my binding with the square corners. If you prefer rounded corners, you could of course round this off with a bowl or something. Let me see if I have anything here. You could just set something round on it. And then draw that shape and trim it and do all 4 corners. But I like to do the square corners because I like to do it like a quilt, binding a quilt. Okay, now that we have our center lines, we can place our quilt block. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 corners right here and put them right on the line. And these 2 corners right here and put them right on the line. And we want to make sure it's centered. And again, if it's not perfect, it's not any big deal, but it'll just look nice finished so it's all even. And I'm just putting some pins in to hold it down. You can put, in fact, let's do that. I'm going to put a little bit of Elmer's glue, and that way it'll hold it a little better. And this will dry clear, and it won't cause any problems to your fabric. It washes out with water, And these will be washed if you're using them as dish mats. So, but just put a little bit on there. And it'll dry, air dry pretty quickly, or you can touch it with a hot iron real quickly. The foam is, will melt or press down if you get it too hot, but I've been able to iron it without, holding it down very long, and it's fine. So let's go ahead and pin this on securely. Now you can decide how you want to quilt this. This is the only one you're going to have to top stitch quilt. The other ones are going to be quilt as you go. So on this one, we could either do, you could do a straight lines going down and then maybe even going across. You could follow the basket and do stitch in the ditch and get it all on there like that. You could go a half of an or quarter of an inch or a little bit less away from the ditch and on both sides and quilt it like that. You could quilt it, of course, at an angle like this, and then this way. That would be nice looking too. Whatever you want. I will probably do, I will see. I'll bring you back and I'll show you what I do. I'm going to think about it. Now, if you have a walking foot for your machine, this is a good time to use it when you are quilting through this thickness of material. But if you don't have one, it will still work just fine. Okay, I'll bring it back and I'll show you what I've quilted mine with. All right, so here is mine that I have finished. And what I ended up doing was I used the seams that were going this direction, and then I also went in the middle of them. So every 1 inch I went at this angle, and then every 1 inch I went at this angle. Now I used a water soluble marker and I just sprayed it to make it disappear, and so it's a little wet right now, but this is real handy to use to mark those lines. I want to give you a few hints. You probably want to make your stitches just a little bit longer. That way, because there's a little bit of a drag with these mats, and that way you'll have a more even stitch. The other thing is when you're doing this line quilting, it's nice to start in the middle. That way you can kind of work your way out. So I started over here and then I worked on both sides. I went back and forth each direction. And then when I got to this side, I went in the middle again and then worked out. It doesn't make as much difference on the second go around, but the first go around, working from the middle out keeps things more even. If you start on the edge, sometimes you're going to get a buckle in there that you can't get out. And then at the very end, I just stitched all the way around right at the edge. You're going to have a 1/4 inch seam here when you're attaching our strips, but I just wanted to hold it down. So there's what I did, and I think it looks really nice. Now we're going to move on to our strips. Okay, so what we're doing next is we're cutting our fabric, and the strip size that I'm using is going to be 1.5 inch, and I just took the length of the fat quarter, the longest side, and I cut a strip from the longest side 1.5 inches. And so I just cut a few of each color just to get started to see how many we're going to need. And let's get started. Now we're going to do what we call a braid. And what that is we're going to be putting fabrics and alternating on each side of this block on this side. Then we're going to go over here and do the same kind of thing. Now I have to decide whether I want my block to be more controlled, where I have the same colors on each of these strips here and just kind of frames it and goes out, or do I want to switch it up a little bit And I'm using a green here. Maybe I'll put a yellow here. And then I've got a brown here, maybe a peach colored here, and just keep going like that. So I think I'm going to make mine scrappy. I think I'm going to use different colors on this side and this side, and that way it just gives the chance of all the fabrics to come together and make just kind of a fun patchworky look. So the first thing we're going to do, let me get these out of the way, is we're going to figure out which side we'll always start on. We're going to always start on this bottom right side, and I could just put a little X right here just to remind me we're always going to start right here. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do is take a strip, and I don't have these cut, I've just got them laying here, and you need to make sure that this goes at least to the edge, maybe even a little over this way. It's going to get covered up by the next strip, but you don't want it too short. So I usually just give about 1/4 of an inch overhang right there. And then this one needs to go off our mat. Now I'm not going to cut it yet, but this is a long enough strip. Now I'm going to go right sides together. Again, there's a little over 1/4 inch overhang here just for safety's sake. And I'm just going to put a couple of pins in just to hold it in place. Now, as you're going, you will decide whether or not you need pins, especially when it gets shorter pieces, you won't need them. So I'm going to move these out of the way right here, and I'm going to my sewing machine. I'm going to start right here. I'm going to sew it all the way down and off the mat, and then I'm going to flip it. So let me go ahead and sew it, and I'll bring you right back. Okay, so I've gone all the way down to the edge. What we'll do is we are going to flip this back. I'm going to give it just a light press. Remember, this underneath here, this foam probably has polyester in it. And so I am just going to fold it like that. And then I'm going to trim this off even with our edge. And I can go ahead and do that right now. And I usually give just about 1/4 of an inch extra because we can always trim it down more later. I'll be right back. Okay, this one is pressed down. Now we're going to go up here at the top, and we are going to choose the color that we're going to use here. Now you can use any thickness of strips, but you have to use the same size when you're matching the two up. If you wanted to have the second row, a thicker one, you could. I'm going to make all of mine 1.5 inches. You could do 2 inches, you could do smaller. The smaller you have, the more of your fabric colors you'll see. You'll have a lot more fabrics. The larger you have will be fewer fabrics. So if you use 2.5 inch strip, you'd end up with a 2 inch piece of fabric, which would be a double of what we're using here. And you wouldn't have very many strips, probably 4 strips that come down this way, and that's fine, that's fine. But I like to have a little more fabric colors and a little smaller since this is a small piece. So when we line this one up, I just like to have it go a tail longer, again, just 1/4 of an inch, just for safety's sake, because sometimes when you're sewing it pulls it back down, and we don't want it to be shorter. So I'm going to flip it over, right sides together, and we're going to do the same thing down here. We are going to pin it. And I've made my stitch longer because when you're sewing on this, it does have a tendency to drag just a little bit. If you notice it dragging quite a bit, just put a piece of tissue paper on the back and just sew over the tissue paper and all. And when you're all finished, just tear the tissue paper off. It'll come off real easily. And you just always want to make sure that when you're sewing, you're getting both pieces of fabric in that seam. If not, you're going to have a piece that's open. So I'm going to sew from here all the way to the edge of my mat, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch away from the edge. All right, I've got that one. We'll just trim this piece off, and this piece right here is actually going to be covered up by a piece over here, so it's going to be overlapped. This piece will be overlapped just a little bit over here too, but we'll just finish them off nicely. All right, let's see what, now we're going to go back down here to our X, our starting point again, and let's try maybe a pink one. And again, this time you're going to go, let me get an edge here, all the way up a 1/4 inch away from this outside edge. Flip it over. Just make sure it covers this whole piece here. Okay, so we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away all the way to the edge, and make sure you go all the way up here. I do go off the mat or off the fabric just to go into the mat, that way it doesn't pull back. Okay, I'll bring it back when I've got that one sewn and pressed. And that one is on, and we'll just trim that off, and we're ready for this top piece. How about this cream floral? We will just put it right here, bringing it all the way to the top of our fabric, over a 1/4 inch, right sides together. And I'll pin it, and we're going to sew from here all the way to here, 1/4 inch away from the edge. And that one is down and pressed. Trim off the excess, and let's go back down to here, and let's see, let's do that yellow. Well, no, we haven't done this tan one yet. Let's do a tan. So we're just going to go like this, make sure everything is laying flat, overlap it. Again, I will pin to make sure it stays in position. And sometimes with the thickness of this mat, it can kind of sink down and pull your seam away. So just watch that. Okay, and I'm going to sew from here to here. All right, so we've got this one on now. We're ready for our next one. Now at this point, I think you have the idea of what we're doing, and we are just going to continue doing this until all of our pieces cover up the very bottom, or the very corner here and the very corner here. They need to overlap that and cover it up. When we get to that point, I will show you what we've got, but I'll just do fast time right now so you can just see as I go, and it should just take less than a minute in fast time. So here we go. There we have that last piece, and it covers it up completely. You really do want to have it covered up completely. If you just had a little tiny piece, that would be okay. You're going to have binding going around it, but you don't want it to be too short. So this corner is all done. I'm going to do the same thing over here, but you don't have to watch this time. And when I get this side done right here, I will bring you back and I'll show you how we get started over here on this side. It is looking really cute. And I've gone all the way to the end on both sides now. I'm just going to trim this long strip off. And we'll finish trimming this up after we finish. I was just getting some of those bigger loops off, and I think it's looking really, really pretty. And as you can see, I've just kind of varied my fabrics in no particular order, just kind of look to see what color would look good in what spot. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this over. Okay, so to get this one started, I'm just going to put an X over here because this is the one we're starting on this time. And so we'll go with this one first each time. And so the fabric is just this one right here. I'm going to lay it, I thought that would look okay. I'm going to lay it face down there. Now this time, again, overlap it just a little bit. This time we are going to sew straight across and all the way off, and you're going to go ahead and cover up the ends of these right here, and that way it will be nicely covered. So when you flip it back, you're going to have all the seams enclosed. So that's the way we're going to do that one. So if you had a wider, well, actually a taller mat, you are going to be going up higher and down lower here, and so you'll have more of these pieces of fabric to cross over. You might have it shorter on the sides, but longer this way, and it will work just the same way. Just always make sure you have enough fabric to go off the end. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. Then I'm going to go to this side and then just repeat the process that we did over there. So I will bring you back when I get this all finished. Okay, I was just kidding about bringing you back when it's done. No, I just wanted to bring you back for a second, just in case you didn't see and understand exactly how that was covering this up. So this is the one that I just did, and you can see, I can bring you down just a little bit. And you can see that it's just finishing off those edges. That's all sewed on. Same thing over here. All those raw edges down here are covered up, and that is sewn just like that. So that is what that's going to do. So I just wanted to show you that. And now I will bring you back after I have all the strips on. And I have all of the pieces on the dish mat. And now we need to trim it up. Doesn't it look pretty? I love the colors. And I think I'm glad that I used that just a little bit darker color. Again, it's not much, but it does bring that basket out just a little bit. Now to trim the strips and to trim up your dish mat, we're going to go from the back, and we're going to get our ruler and our rotary cutter. So making sure that all your fabric strips are laying the way they should be, especially those corner ones, you don't want them to flip back on you. Put the edge of your ruler right past that edge of your dish mat. And if you get a little dish mat in there, I did just a little fuzz, it's fine. And then we're going to turn it. Let's see if we can do it this way. This is kind of a tight spot. Okay, so let's do this way. See if I can get my hand over the sewing machine here. There we go. And I've got a little of the mat in right there. That's okay. Now, because it's so thick right now, your ruler might be up higher and your blade may not hit the mat, so you'll have to kind of push on your ruler to smash your dish mat down. sewing machine's in the way there. I'll get it from here and then slide it on up. Okay, I think we got it. Let's take a look at the front. That's looking really pretty. And the last thing we have to do is to put the binding on. I decided on this fabric right here because I figured that little stripe would look cute on a binding and it would kind of coordinate with the basket. So we can audition it right there and see what it's going to look like, and it looks like it's going to be cute. On my fat quarter, I cut 4 strips, the length of the fat quarter, so that's 22 inches for each strip. Each strip was 2.5 inches wide. I attached them together with the diagonal seam, and then I folded it in half. On this video, I am not including the instructions on binding your dish mat. If you need help on that and you have a mat that has rounded corners, go to the February dish mat video and I will walk you through how to bind a rounded corner mat. If you have square corners, just go to the last video that I have done on sewing, and that is the bunny pillow. It's part 2, and on that one I show you how to take a quilted project and add a binding that has square corners, and on those I walk you right through all of the steps. Okay, I've got our binding all sewn on, and you can just look real carefully at it. I think you can see it there. Just went right next to the edge of that binding, got it sewn on, and in the back, I've got a few threads still, it either, most of the time it was on the dish mat. Every once in a while I had a little bit come up on the binding, and that's okay, but it looks good. And I tell you, the stitches do really nicely on this material. You can see the nice quilting, the grid work here in the middle. I don't know if you can see it, but, and then the strips, it looks pretty in the back too. So we've got some really pretty quilting on there. Now, if you wanted to, if your machine has some decorative stitches, you could easily do decorative stitches on the top, on these lines here or these seams here. That would be really pretty too. And I've done that on some of them in the past. But you just make it your own and do how you like. But I think the colors of this one are very springy, and I'm glad I went with a little bit darker in the middle. That does seem to pop nicely. I think it would have looked well with any of the fabrics, but I do like it with this one. And I think I really like this design. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're making it. And if you are making it and you make it, you can post it, a picture of it, on my Facebook page, Blue Rooster Farm, and I would just really love to see that. I enjoy seeing the different fabrics because right now I'm trying to think what other fabric I have that would make a pretty spring one, and I might be making another one for maybe a gift, but I think this turned out really nicely. And of course, this doesn't have to be for spring. We've got a basket here, but it could be for any time of year, and just depending on the fabrics that you're using. But this turned out really nicely. So I appreciate you watching this video. If you enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing. That would really help my channel out a lot. And also, please share this with your friends or any other fellow sewers or quilters. So let me know in the comments below if you have questions, and I hope to see you back here soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.